welcome back. I'm on a roll, so I figured I might as well record this video too while I'm at it. So this video will be released on Easter Monday, so happy Easter Monday to whoever celebrates it again. But let's talk about my favorite albums of March of 2024. So I listened to a lot of great records. Some I had to cut down from the list, in particular We Don't Trust You by Metro Boomin and Future, and Schoolboy Q with Blue Lips. So all of these records, I haven't put their ratings down of my ratings for these things. Just know that I'm kind of doing the Fantano system where all of these records here are 8 or higher. So whenever I get to these records, I'll probably put the number of what I have them at. There was a lot of 8s on here. So it was a very good month if you really dug deep into all the music that released. All those albums that I mentioned before, Blue Lips and We Don't Trust You, they're still really good records, but they just didn't make the cut for this list. So, to start off, we have Kenny Mason with 9. So, Kenny Mason has been dropping a few little bit of EPs going through, honestly, maybe the past year or so, and 9 is kind of an EP, but it's kind of building on to kind of make it a little bit of a bigger scope of an album. And Kenny Mason continues his run of bringing the more kind of alt rock, grungy, kind of punk aesthetics and kind of really bridging the gap and making those sounds work well together. My favorite song in here is probably Jumping In. There is the great song of Toro y Moi on this thing. It is just, if you're looking for the sounds you got on Highway 9, if you're looking for the sounds that you got on 6, if you're looking for the sounds you've gotten on Roughs, you're going to get some pretty familiar kind of territory with this thing. But that's to say that this record kind of refines what those albums and those EPs kind of led to this point. There's some really great songs in here. Again, Jumping In is amazing. Easy Dub has one of my favorite hooks of the year. And the production from Coop is fantastic. So if you're just looking for just a really solid, just really to the point album, it's a very short listen. Kenny Mason's 9 really does deliver that. So Tierra Whack with Worldwide Whack. So with 9, actually before I do that, Kenny Mason gets an 8 out of 10. And Tierra Whack with Worldwide Whack. I probably just bumped the camera. So Worldwide Whack, to me, is the debut album that we have been kind of waiting for so long. Tierra Whack did release Whack World, I believe it's about 2018, but each song was about a minute long, so it was about a 15-minute long project. And while that is a really cool album in concept, it probably doesn't gonna have the staying power. I have listened to it a couple times, I just don't really remember that much. So this album is kind of the introduction for Tierra Whack to me. So when I listened to this album, I liked it, but it kind of didn't really stick with me until I got into more listens and multiple listens through, because there was just something about this album that kind of just really stuck with me and made me continue going back to this record. And what I really enjoy about this is that it just feels innocent, it feels genuine, it feels emotional, and it feels very much in Tierra Whack's kind of wheelhouse. I get a really good idea of who Tierra Whack is as a person as well as an artist. There's some really fun topics on here that you would not expect. I really like Chanel Pit. It's just a lot of fun to listen to. Shower Song is overhated. I still think the song is quite fun. But you do get moments that dive a little bit deeper into depression, dives a little bit into just kind of just loneliness, and just the feelings of just being off or being sad, or kind of trying to find your place in the world. And I really like songs like Difficult. I like songs like Movies. 27 Club is great as well. There's a lot of these really fun kind of vocal inflections and moments on this album too. I can think about Burning Brains that has this kind of sloshy and weird kind of vocal melody that works through the chorus. But for some reason, Tierra Whack, where another artist could do that and it makes it sound really strange and probably out there, Tierra Whack finds a way to make it sound endearing and interesting. And I really like this record to kind of step outside the box to make it sound a little bit more kind of playful and a little bit more kind of just more palatable, and something that you don't have to go into expecting just harshness, aggressiveness. It's just something that's kind of just pleasant. And the closest similarity I can think to with this album is that this is the mainstream equivalent of No Name's Telephone, which I believe is from 2016. And I love that record for being just so simple, just so sweet, so really just touching and just emotionally resonant with me. So I really like that album, and this kind of album gives that for me as well. And it's probably one of my favorite rap records of the year, surprisingly. So with that, once again, this album gets an 8 out of 10. So now we move on to Powerwasher with Everyone Laughs. So Powerwasher is a band that I kind of found on Bandcamp because I was really interested in the album cover, which is kind of like this watercolor picture of a bowling alley, which is an interesting kind of picture. But this album has a lot of garage rock, it has a lot of punk. It kind of reminds me of mid to late 2000s Block Party at some portions, especially when it comes to its instrumentation. I'm thinking about Catalog in particular. This album is a lot of fun, and it's probably one of my favorite underground surprises of the year. It just has a lot of energy. It has the moments where it can get really insane and really off the wall, kind of just really chaotic and fun. And it's only about like 30 to 35 minutes, I believe. This is a really good listen if you're looking for some really good garage and kind of just really kind of harder rock. I think you'll really like this project. And we start once again with an 8 out of 10 for that record. So then we get to Everything, Everything with Mountainhead. I have been listening to Everything, Everything ever since Get to Heaven in 2015. And that record is one of my favorite records of the decade for how fun and how adventurous that album is when it comes to kind of the pop rock, the indie rock, and just kind of how glitzy and how really just vibrant that record is, especially when it comes to the frontman's vocals. And Everything, Everything kind of recaptures the sound of Get to Heaven, while Get to Heaven is a lot more kind of colorful, a little bit more kind of brash with its sound. Everything, Everything with Mountainhead kind of bridges that gap to make it sound a little bit more, I guess you could say a little bit more mature in its sound, but it still brings some of Everything's really great hooks that they've brought for the past few years, especially Get to Heaven. Get to Heaven has amazing hooks, and Everything really brings that on Mountainhead. It's a nice return to form for this band that has been kind of bridging the line between going back to the sound that made them really interesting to me in the first place, and trying some experiments that kind of just was a little bit more kind of fair weather for me personally. I feel like this record again kind of harkens back to the sound that made them interesting in the first place. My favorite track is probably Wild Guess, which is the first song on here. Another great, amazing hook. And again, the frontman's vocals are really interesting and they're very unique to the genre that it's in. So if you're looking for some really good, just kind of indie rock, kind of more poppy in its sound, I really recommend Mountainhead, which also gets an 8 out of 10. There's a lot of these. And then we get to the big one for me, which is Adrianne Lenker with Bright Future. I have talked about this album a few times. Still, my favorite album of the year. It is so genuine. It is so heartfelt. It is so depressing. It's so gorgeous. It makes a lot of the simplicity and the minimalism that this album has and makes it into this very heart-wrenching but also just absolutely gorgeous display of music. And I am still so incredibly impressed with this record. And this one here, again, it's about a 9.5 out of 10. I really like it. So getting to albums that I just recently talked about. So Beyoncé with Cowboy Carter, a really good foray into country. You still get some detours here and there, but I believe that Beyoncé brings her great songwriting, it brings her great vocals, and it kind of tells a nice little chronicled story of a radio station kind of feel where you get those kind of legends and staples of country music and how Beyoncé kind of fits into that genre, kind of bringing back the older sounds of country back. And she really does a great job of bringing just all of the amazing qualities of her music into a different genre and pulling it off very well. Again, the album is still quite long. The replay value may suffer because of that, but overall, this album is still really great with an 8 out of 10 to that as well. So, Sir with Heavy, this is one of my favorite R&B records of the year. It's very syrupy, it's very smooth. Sir really knows how to make this album just really engaging and really interesting, but you also get some moments that are a little bit more harsher, a little bit more aggressive, but you also get some moments of introspection and moments of a little bit of positivity when I think of Brighter and when you think of Vicky's song. These two songs here just kind of change it up a little bit, where it can be introspective, where it can be political, where it can be very topical. And then you get to Brighter that kind of closes the record off into something that's a little bit more positive, a little bit more hopeful. And kind of need songs and records like that nowadays, because you really don't get that a lot anymore. It's a lot depressing stuff that's going on in the world, and sometimes you don't need to hear that through music. Sometimes you need a little bit of a bright kind of spot in your music for escapism, and I feel like Sir does do that in a couple songs here. And overall, this album is really good, and not much I could say that I haven't said already. So it is another 8 out of 10. And the last record I am discussing is Blue with Out of the Blue. Again, I just discussed this record. This album is a nice kind of mix of some trunk knocking bangers. You get the introspection, you get the smooth summery vibes, and you get the little bit of the abstract hip hop that Blue is known for. I have listened to, I believe it's Below the Heavens. I have listened to that record, so I'm getting more familiar with Blue's music. And overall, I really like this record and the story that it tells about gang affiliations, gang ties, especially in LA, and kind of the story that it chronicles through its entire thing, where it talks about the brutality of the violence, the gangs trying to mend that violence. And now that I'm catching now, the more I listen to it, the more I'm realizing that the police kind of play a role of kind of bringing on this cycle of violence, to keep bringing it back and forth and bring back the cycle of violence all over again. It's kind of a really deep and layered record the more that you listen to it. And I feel like this album could grow higher than an 8 the more I listen to it. But for right now, it is still an 8 out of 10. And that covers all of March. And I think I did a pretty good job condensing all that. So that is all of the records that I have really gravitated towards, I really enjoyed. So I really hope you give all these albums a listen, or give a couple tracks a listen. I will be putting all of the albums and link down in the description. And again, I thank you very much for watching. Happy Easter, and I will catch you next time.